I'll get straight to the point. My middle son is a senior in college, and he's a good kid most of the time. But right now, I'm a bit cross with him. He just asked me for money for a spring break trip to Hawaii with his friends, and it caught me off guard. Like I said, he's a good kid, and I want him to enjoy himself. But something about the way he asked rubbed me the wrong way. His mother has been struggling with her mental health lately, and it would have meant a lot to her to have him around. But I guess he's more preoccupied with getting wasted on a beach with his frat brothers. I can't even say I blame him. I was exactly the same at his age. In fact, the whole situation made me reminisce about my own college days and something I hadn't thought about in a long time. That's the story I'm about to tell. Funny enough, my son was the one who introduced me to this page, so maybe he'll get a kick out of this if it gets read. I went to Wharton, class of '85, something I'm still damn proud of. It was and still is one of the most prestigious business schools in the world, and I took that reputation seriously. I had my fun, but I also worked like hell. It was a different time back then. A lot of my classmates were crazy, Wolf of Wall Street crazy, and I did my best to avoid getting swept up into that life. But my junior year, I did something impulsive. I was dating a Puerto Rican girl named Maria Muñez. I remember her fondly. Sometimes I imagine how different my life would have been if I had taken things further with some of the girlfriends I had back then. Maria was one of them. Instead of going home for spring break like I usually did, Maria convinced me to visit Puerto Rico and meet her extended family. It was my first time on the island, and I was eager to impress her, so I agreed without hesitation. That said, I was a nervous wreck. Maria often joked about how open Puerto Rican families were, so I was aware that they already knew a lot about me. But my anxiety was mostly unjustified. I got along well with everyone, and it seemed like they really liked me. Most of the trip was spent meeting her relatives, but we did have time for a few outings of our own. One of those outings was a hike through El Yunque, which, fun fact, is the only tropical rainforest in the U.S. National Forest System. Since neither of us had a car, Maria's mother drove us to one of the most popular trailheads and dropped us off. We were both a little rebellious, so we took advantage of not having to drive. The plan was simple: hike, enjoy the scenery, and sneak in a little rum and weed. Everything was lining up to be perfect. But then we realized there was a problem. The trail we were most excited about was closed. I don't remember why, maybe flooding or maintenance. All I remember is that Maria was really upset. I tried to calm her down, suggesting we hike one of the many other trails, but she wouldn't budge. She insisted that this was the best trail, and the others didn't even compare. I had long since learned the dangers of arguing with her over something like this. So when she proposed we hike the closed trail anyway, I was on board. We'd come all this way. Why let some rule stop us? We made sure no one was watching, slipped past the barriers, and started up the trail, laughing like a couple of idiots. At first, it was exactly what we wanted. Better even. It felt like we had the entire forest to ourselves. We passed little waterfalls, admired the beauty of the rainforest, and yes, we were drinking. Not excessively, just enough for a good buzz. It was fun. But then out of nowhere, Maria screamed and jumped back, nearly knocking me over. My adrenaline surged. I didn't know what scared her, so I looked around frantically. Then I saw it. A little further down the path was what looked like a freshly decapitated mongoose. Let me repeat that. A mongoose. A big one. And its head was completely missing. The cut was too clean for it to have been anything other than a knife wound. That was downright disturbing. But the worst part? The body hadn't started smelling yet. That meant it hadn't been there for long. Maria was shaking. I was mostly in shock. I tried to reassure her with something dumb like, crime in a national forest is unlikely, even though I couldn't explain it myself. I put my arm around her and led her past the body, trying to block it from her view. All I could think about was putting some serious distance between us and that lifeless creature. We walked in silence for a while. The adrenaline killed my buzz. Maria was clearly still shaken, but she insisted we stick to our plan and hike the whole trail. It was obvious she didn't want to be there anymore, and I didn't blame her. As we walked, my mind kept trying to rationalize what we had seen. Was someone hunting out here? Was it even legal? And if it was a hunter, why just leave the body there? None of it made sense. Maria and I hiked another mile or so. I kept trying. to cheer her up, but nothing worked. Eventually, she admitted she wasn't feeling well and wanted to turn back. I didn't argue, though I was dreading having to pass that spot again. As we retraced our steps, I braced myself. I told Maria to keep her head down so she wouldn't have to see it. But when we reached the spot, the mongoose was gone. Someone had moved it. My heartbeat started racing. I scanned the nearby trees, expecting someone to be watching us. Then I saw it. The mongoose was hanging from a tree. Its paws were tied together with twine. A sickly green liquid dripped from its body, something that hadn't been there before. It rotated slowly in the wind. I cursed out loud, making Maria open her eyes. The moment she saw it, she let out a blood-curdling scream. Before she could freeze, I grabbed her wrist and told her to run. We took off, sprinting down the trail. I let her go in front of me while I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting someone to be chasing us. Instead, a scream rang out behind us, a woman's scream. It was terrifying. The kind of scream someone makes when they're being attacked. Maria sobbed, trying to push herself harder, but she was already out of breath. My own chest burned, but we couldn't stop. Eventually, she could barely run, so we slowed to a fast walk. I turned around, walking backward, bracing myself for a fight. Something had strung up that mongoose. Something had caused that scream. Finally, the trailhead came into view. Relief washed over me until I saw him. A park worker stood near the barricades, arms crossed, clearly pissed. The moment we slipped past, he started yelling at us for breaking the rules and told us we were banned for life. But then he got a good look at Maria, who was still sobbing and exhausted. I told him everything. He took it seriously, really seriously. He took us to a small ranger station where a supervisor was waiting. They called the police. Maria's mother arrived, and we left, still shaking. I never found out what they discovered. I broke up with Maria that summer, and we lost contact. But even after all these years, that day still haunts me. And the worst part, that scream, because we never saw anyone else on that trail, and I have no idea who it belonged to. I'd consider myself a pretty laid-back guy. I'd say the same about most of my friends. This happened last year, so I'll get right into it. Spring break was supposed to be just me and my friends, Jackson, Ariel, and Isabel, camping on a secluded beach in Alabama. No crowds, just stars and waves. We got there late, later than we planned. We parked in the closest lot and began walking toward the beach. The place where was dead quiet, no other campers, no fishermen, nothing but empty sand stretching for miles, according to Isabel, who was familiar with the area. Locals sometimes use that part of the beach for overnight fishing, but that night it was empty. It wasn't fully dark out yet, but the sun had started setting, so we'd need to set up camp quickly. Jackson and I began pitching the tents since I had driven. I had brought my dog Bean with me. He was a Doberman who loved the sand, so we all got a kick out of watching him run and roll around. At one point, Ariel pointed out a car in the distance, saying it had driven by twice already. I turned an old beat-up-looking SUV, slowly rolled past on the narrow access road that ran parallel to the dunes. The access road was a little more than a strip of packed sand, just wide enough for one car. On one side was the beach where we were, and the other side was a line of shrubs. You couldn't really see the main roads from where we were. The car drove by and ultimately disappeared down the road. The four of us shrugged it off and went back to setting up. And by the time we finished, we decided to crack a few beers and chop it up in a circle. The girls drank seltzers instead of beer, which we made fun of them for. It was almost fully dark at that point. I can't remember who noticed it first, but that car that had driven by was back again. Only this time, it stopped when it was parallel to us. The driver's door opened and a man got out. I could tell it was a man because he was really tall. Although I couldn't make out any features of his face, he began walking towards us, and the girls got nervous. Jackson and I told them not to worry, and we got up to go intercept the man before he could reach our campsite. Bean was already on high alert, so I told him to come with us as we got closer. I started to notice that he was walking oddly. There was this slight limp in his walk, and he almost stumbled a few times when we got close enough. Jackson said, "How's it going, man?" Trying to keep things light, the guy didn't waste any time. He immediately said, "You're on my property." He slurred his words a bit, and I figured he was a little drunk. I told him we thought the beach was public land. Keep in mind, it was really unlikely that some dude owned the beach. There were no private signs anyway after I said that the guy didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a knife. Bean started growling in response to the man's body language, which honestly should have scared the guy off given how scary Dobermans look. But he didn't budge. Instead, he started running towards us with his knife outstretched. Bean charged at him and jumped to attack his arm that was holding the knife, causing him to fall to the ground. I yelled no at the top of my lungs as I didn't want my dog to get stabbed. But Bean somehow got the dude to drop the knife. The man screamed in pain as Bean bit his arm. I whisked for him to get off, and he listened to me. He ran back to my side but kept his eyes on the guy who was now writhing in pain on the ground. Eventually, the guy got up and started running back towards his car. Jackson and I ran back to the girls to explain what had just happened. Moments later, the SUV sped off into the night, disappearing down the dirt road. The girls insisted we pack up and leave immediately. I hesitated. There was a chance we'd run into him again in the dark. But Isabel made a good point. What if he comes back with a weapon? I told Ariel to call the police and give them our location. We didn't start packing until we knew officers were on their way. Bean remained alert, watching the surroundings closely. To be honest, the only reason I felt remotely safe that night was because of him. When we reached the parking area, we spotted flashing lights. Relief washed over me as a police officer approached. But we weren't prepared for what happened next. The officer immediately noticed my car's tires had been slashed. My stomach dropped. He drew his weapon and ordered me to open the car. I obeyed. He checked the trunk, but thankfully, there was nothing dangerous inside. The officer helped us arrange for a tow truck. That night, I was more grateful than ever that I had brought Bean along. That man could have been a deranged drifter or a real danger. If it weren't for Bean, this story might have ended with 4 bodies on that beach. Camping in remote areas with friends is fun, but one should never forget that such places have their own dangers.